I picked up the claims that are being made now about this vaccine are like off the charts, a leap in that has never been made before. What's your take on that?
I agree 100%, and they are making leap is exactly the right word. They are connecting dots that are so far apart in my mind. Like, just to be clear, this phase 3 trial that Pfizer's been doing has around 43,000 people enrolled in it. Of those 43,000, roughly 50% got the vaccine and 50% got a placebo. So somewhere around 21, 22,000 people got the vaccine and an equal number got, a fake shot, a placebo. In that group of 43,000 people, there have been somewhere in the range of 100 cases of COVID. People have gotten COVID. So they looked at those 100 cases of COVID and they said, wow, 10 of them were in people who got the actual vaccine, and the other 90 were in people who got placebo. So that means that the vaccine is 90% effective. That's not how that works. Okay.
Hey, that's what. Yeah, that's why I'm glad you were on today, because that was like stunning to me.
Yeah. You are making a leap that in my mind you can't make. First of all, we have no idea who the 100 people are who contracted COVID. We don't know, did they test all 43,000 people for COVID? No. So this is, there may be many, many more people who got COVID and simply didn't get tested for it. All of those people who are getting tested hand over fist, regularly, many of them, we don't know who the heck the 100 people are who got tested. And anyway, you cut it, 100 people is a very small number out of 43,000. So you don't know what that means. All of this said, Dr. Kaiser is quite right. When it comes to things like vaccines for influenza, very similar to the vaccine they'd be creating for COVID, in a good year, a really good year, the vaccine for influenza is somewhere in the range of 69 or 70% effective. In a lousy year, might only be 22, 23% effective. So normally we never approach anything like 90% effectiveness in influenza. So I would be shocked also if we had that kind of efficacy on a COVID-19 vaccine. And then we have to get into the whole issue of how long the dang thing would last, because they have nary a clue at this point how long antibodies to COVID-19 stick around. So we simply...
What is there any stats on if there's any regular flu that's going on this year and how it's stacking up compared to other years besides COVID?
Boy, wouldn't we like to know?
Yes.
Interestingly, the CDC came out now just about not quite 3 weeks ago and announced that, quote, because of COVID and all the resources going into that, they are not tracking influenza this year, which is insane. So I'm saying, well, what do you mean you're not tracking influenza? So instead, everything, unfortunately, so many of the people who test positive for COVID-19, their symptoms actually may be as a result of influenza, and they incidentally are test season to determine what's actually influenza and what's COVID-19.
Kelly recommend the flu shot. I'm asking because I never get it.
I recommend a flu shot for people who are in the high risk categories. I mean, I'm not do get it, not housy, but I sure as heck am not going to die from it, and I'm not in one of those risk categories where I'm likely to have any long-term effects from it. So I personally don't get an influenza shot, despite the fact that I'm a clinician, I'm a practitioner. I see thousands of patients every year. I track.
No, there's something that was in a press conference, David, as I call him, the mortician, Galley, the head guy up there, head health official for Gruesome Newsom, the governor of hair gel. They moved San Diego County back to the purple, which we are in LA and LA and San Bernardino County. They said probably if Orange County's numbers don't improve, they will move back in the purple. And he predicted half of the counties and probably most of the populated counties would be in the purple or take one step back by next week. And Disneyland just laid off a furlough of executives of that on top of the 20,000 they did about a month ago, and they're not saying how many, but executives, hourly employees, they got to jump through, 3 tiers now just to get to 25% capacity. Mind you, there is no 100% or green in this. I'm going to say Disneyland by 2021 is going to announce they're going to be gone out of here over this.
Oh, I think no question. Bob Iger, the CEO and the chairman of Disney, is a force to be reckoned with. I worked with Disney in the past. Great company, but they don't take any prisoners. He will leave. He's kind of like an Elon Musk. He's got the power to do it, and I think he's going to eventually say to California, you know what, the heck with y'all. I'll go to, Florida or somewhere else. We'll go to Tennessee or Kentucky or someplace that's actually open for business and wants our business. Unfortunately, we knew that we were going to be facing these rolling lockdowns. It's precisely the wrong thing to do. We are not going to eliminate the virus by doing that. And all you do guarantee is that you're going to continue to exact huge economic and psychosocial tolls on people by doing this. Unfortunately, I toggle back and forth primarily between Southern California and where I'm sitting today, which is Colorado, and one is just as bad as the other. I got off a plane today, it landed back in Colorado from California, only to find out that my county has now rolled back and we're in a total shutdown over a whole lot of nothing. Unfortunately, and the new administration, if we are moving forward with Joe Biden at the helm, I really fear that this is going to continue well into not only 2021, but easily into 2022, because Joe Biden will clearly keep Fauci and team running the show. And Fauci's made it very clear that he doesn't believe we can get back to any semblance of normal. And he's talking about things like movie theaters or schools being open, sporting events, concerts, those sorts of things, until, in his words, 80 to 90% of the population has been vaccinated. So that requires not only for a vaccine to be approved, but to be widely distributed, and it would require a whole heck of a lot of people who aren't interested in getting a COVID vaccine to be somehow coerced or forced or whatever into getting one, if we're actually listening to Anthony Fauci.
I found it interesting, too, that, as I said earlier, the twin evil governors, Newsom and Cuomo, and Biden, to an extent, were saying, oh, we can't get the vaccine out, Trump will screw it up, da-da-da-da. Just say even if Pfizer got a vaccine done and got it approved and had it ready to go, as they say, by probably the first of the year with the emergency deals, that would be almost unheard of that it would take place in that condensed time. And the only reason it could is because the Trump administration dropped most of the rules and regulations and conditions that make not only vaccines but drugs and everything else 9,000 times more expensive than they should be. And now they're trying to pull cold water on this. I believe, one, to protect the drug companies and the monopoly they've had on us for years, but they will not give credit to, if you uncuff the private sector, this is what happens.
I agree with you. There's no question. It would be absolutely unprecedented. The average time for a vaccine from the beginning to actually a full approval and launching to the public is somewhere between 4 and 6 years. That's the average. Now, there are many, many viruses that have been around a heck of a lot longer than COVID-19, for which scientists have never been able to create an effective vaccine. Think about things like, herpes or, HIV, Ebola, norovirus, Coxsackie virus. I mean, just to name a few. There are viruses that have been around that every year decimate, the cruise industry. We know the incredible toll that HIV took. Fortunately, now we've got great therapeutics for HIV, so it's no longer the death sentence that it was when it first came out in their late 80s, early 90s. But let's face it, we haven't cured it. We haven't prevented it with a vaccine. So the idea that we would all of a sudden be able to create a safe and effective vaccine for COVID-19 in true warp speed, it would be unprecedented. I have my doubts about it, where they're using brand new technology. This is a technology that has never been used before for vaccine development, using actually genetic material, the RNA from the virus spike proteins, in order to create antibodies specific to those proteins on the outside. It's exciting stuff, but boy, I have a very measured approach to it.
Yeah, it is something else on the horizon going on back and forth on this stuff. It's amazing to me, like I said, we're in for a whirlwind roll here. On top of the election, and we did some of the fraud things and that, and statistical analysis and Bedford's Law and all the stuff that's going on that stuff. But even of that, there still is a possibility in my mind, and we got a couple minutes left of that. There still is a possibility based on the way the vote coming in that Trump could still could go the way of Trump on this whole election thing. Although the odds are really long on that, and I think if Trump somehow stays in office, I think COVID is the last thing we're going to have to worry about based on past history, which is best indication of future behavior. What do you say, Dr. Kelly?
Oh, I agree entirely. Unfortunately, I think it is a very long shot. It would require you, first of all, to all of the sudden trust the system that let us
Yes.
down in the first place. There is no question in my mind that there was just tremendous fraud that took place. And you may recall, and I take no joy in it, but one of the very first tweets I sent out about COVID, the third week of February, was, quote unquote, "Mark my words, this will turn into the excuse for why we need to do mail-in ballots and will launch the greatest stealing of an election in American history." And that's exactly what it turned into. So this was quite predictable in my mind, but it would require, to turn things around would require you to trust the system that let us down in the first place. So I think it's unlikely. If Trump had gotten reelected, or if God, he some way he were to stay in office, I think that we would turn this around quickly, because he made it very clear that he intended to open the economy back up, to get kids back to school, to apply the pressure of the purse to different states in order to make that happen. And unfortunately, I don't think that that's what we're going to be looking at under a Biden-Harris administration.
Well, as long as being the world's #1 physician, maybe you're going to be the world's #1 political pundit too, because that was a heck of a prediction on the mail-in ballot back in February. Of that, Dr. Kelly, thanks for being on. We really appreciate it. We'll do it again real soon.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Dr. Kelly.
Talk soon.
Bye.
That was a good, that was one heck of a call back in February of, watch the mail-in ballots. That's going to do that, and doing that. But that's why we have her on, because she, not only does she have her pulse on, a very highly esteemed physician, but is very well versed in the political, and every, most anything that's going on in our processes too. So that's probably because, she's been a consultant to major corporations and doing that, and disaster preparedness and stuff. So you have to study that kind of stuff along with being, along with actually being a doctor and training for that. You have to take into all sorts of that, all of those things into account. So that's what really, especially in this situation, somebody like Dr. Kelly Victory can look at the whole, the whole concept, the whole picture of what's going on, not like a Dr. Anthony Fauci, which I'm sure he's probably a very highly esteemed epidemiologist and can run test tubes around probably most anybody in the world. But when it comes to looking at the big picture, he's just out to lunch.
Right. I'm so bummed, man.
Why?
Because I thought this year was gonna get a little bit better.
Oh well, we'll soldier through it and see what happens on the flip side. But
I'm curious to see what. Do we really have any other choice though?
No, you got to play. It's kind of like saying poker or playing cards, or you got to play the hand you're dealt, not the hand you wish.
Right.
And this is the hand we're dealt. We're going to have to play it as it comes out. And I said this in 2008. Everybody. Let's say most people from the center right. Oh, everything's going to blow up. Because Barack Obama got elected. Hey, it is. And then 2012, when he got reelected, everybody, let's say center right, or he's not going to get reelected, and he did. And I said, he probably is on that point of especially when they ran Mitt Romney against him. I said, he's probably going to get reelected, but you know what? That's the way it goes. You win some and you lose some in the politics game.
Right.
But what you do, if you don't let it get to you, what you do, and I think Cliff said it, you get up the next day, you get back to work, you work on making your point of view, your philosophy, put it out there and work to win the next election or change the direction of the world. Not sit there on your hands fretting about what happened or who's that or this or that. No matter how this shakes out when we finally, the pin drops on this stuff, that's the way I see it and that's the way I'm playing it. And I'm not necessarily the biggest, thinking that, the whole world's going to fall apart over this whole thing. So we have to keep an optimistic look on it.
Yes, we do.
Across anything as we're going forward. We'll be back tomorrow. What are we going to call it? Wicked Wednesday again or something else?
See.
On
we'll
that.
See what
But until then, tune in 23 hours and find out. Till then, we're gone.